everyone, this is Charlie Levine, and you are listening to the Angler's Journal podcast, brought to you by Angler's Journal magazine. If you're looking for a different fishing magazine that isn't just full of the same old stuff, that actually writes some in-depth stories about the people and places and boats and all the cool stuff that makes fishing great, check out anglersjournal.com and pick up a subscription. The Angler's Journal podcast is brought to you by Atlantis Marine Finance. You know, myself, I just unloaded my boat, and I'm without a boat for the first time in like 15 years. And I'm already looking around. I got ideas. I think a few different things I want to purchase, or, you know, future shopping as it is. But when it comes time to do it, I'm going to need to finance that boat. And Atlantis Marine Finance is a great option. They've got a lot of experience. They've got a team of industry pros, actual boat owners. They have the knowledge and resources to help you get on the water. So if you're looking to purchase a new boat or a used boat or even a project boat, Atlantis Marine Finance will give you all the educational resources you need to make a good decision and help you down that path to your next boat purchase. For more information, visit atlantismarinefinance.com, and good luck. Get out there and get that boat.
Hey everyone, this is Charlie Levine, the editor-in-chief of Angler's Journal magazine, and you are listening to the Angler's Journal podcast. Today is really cool. We've got someone who's probably got more miles of water underneath their hull than just about anybody we've ever talked to. Without further ado, Mr. Chris Fischer from OCEARCH Shark Tagging Expeditions. How are you, man?
I'm good, Charlie. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure to see you. You know, it had been a while, and we kind of bumped into each other at the Costa event there in Jupiter, and
Costa Days. Yeah, that was nice to get back together again after all these years of kind of, not being. It was just great to see everybody. Been too long.
Absolutely. Yeah, they sure know how to put on a fun event. That was great. The fishing was good. The entertainment was fun, and just most of the people that were there was just fantastic.
Yeah, it was great to reconnect.
But I guess I first got to know you when you had the Offshore Adventures show back in like the early 2000s, and you were cruising around the Pacific, and I fell in love with how you guys always talked about the food and the culture and all the stuff on all the places you went to. And I was wondering if that was your first sort of foray into TV work, or how that all happened.
Yeah, so it was, life really evolves, right? And I think, one thing my dad said to me when I was young, he's like, "Hey, Chris, a few times in your life, the opportunity bus is going to come by, and you get to choose whether or not to jump on, and it may never come around the corner again, so take it seriously." So there was a time around late 97 where we had a small family business we'd started when I was young, and it was sold. And I thought I was going to work there my whole life. I was 29 years old, and it wasn't enough to stop working, but it was enough to kind of think about what you were passionate about and try to chart a course for the rest of your life and have a little bit of money to try to maybe get something going. And so I had grown up in Louisville, Kentucky, chasing fish and frogs around the woods, and my passion was always the water. I was the kid who was sticking bluegill in every neighborhood pond and bass in every neighborhood pond and getting dropped off at creeks off the highway. And my mom would pick me up 5 miles down the creek at another bridge, and really fell in love with being deeply connected to nature, I think, and the way I was spending my time in nature was fishing and on and around the water. And that just, the passion ran deep. And then I never really talk about this, but my parents, they were amazing. Not only from like the philanthropic side and my mom on the serve side, but when I was in fourth grade, they picked me up in an RV out in Louisville, Kentucky, the day after fourth grade ended. And we drove all the way to Alaska and back, and got back the day before fifth grade started.
Holy crap.
And we drove the Alaskan highway, the 1,200-mile gravel road. And all I did was fish, especially out in Alaska, because it was light all night. And my parents totally enabled, like every campsite was next to a river, and so it was on. And I really think, I feel like that trip really changed me.
Sounds like a pretty wild adventure.
Yeah. And then, from then on, we were camping whenever we could on holidays, and they were always making the water accessible. So anyway, the thirst for exploration and the desire to see what was around the corner, that type of thing, was deeply enrooted by them, along with anything's possible, nothing is impossible. And, it always feels better to help other people than just to help yourself. That was kind of the dinner table conversation. So super entrepreneurial, went to school at IU and the National University of Singapore, studying international entrepreneurship, focusing on Asia and the Pacific Rim, and then actually went and worked over there for about a half a dozen years, worked all over the world for our little family business. We made beverage equipment for Coke and Pepsi, and they were everywhere. So you had to kind of support them everywhere. And so in 97, my older brothers and dad, they sold the business. And so I started thinking about what I was going to do. And this is a true story, man. I was living in Newport Beach, California at the time in the early 90s when it was awesome. and I started spending time on the water when I had that break, just to reflect on what I wanted to do for a couple of months before I got going at something. And I started to notice it didn't feel like people were really connected to the ocean, like even my peers. And I was living near the water, and we weren't talking about what was going on the water. It wasn't like now, where it's the decade of the ocean and ocean plastics and everybody's all about it. I mean, which is awesome, but there's been a lot of groups and a lot of people who've been pushing since like 2000 on these issues. And finally, the critical scale of awareness of all those good groups and organizations, along with some great content on BBC and other, kind of got it over the tipping point, and I was wondering why people weren't really interested in the ocean in the late 90s and early 2000s. And so I thought back on my life, Cousteau was my hero. I loved Cousteau. I was crazed. I watched it all when I was little. And then Cousteau had passed. And there was no plan, for that to keep going after him. And the ocean lost its voice at scale, at global scale. Mm-hmm. And, I was young enough and dumb enough at the time. I said, okay, well, here's the big picture. I'm going to pour the world's oceans into people's lives at a scale unseen since Cousteau. That was like the noble goal. I just thought it's like nobody's got their eye on the ball here. And so, at least at scale, there was like talking to normal people about the ocean in a normal centrist way, that people could relate to and get. And so I started Offshore Adventures, and the true story of that is I actually signed up to learn. I didn't know how to make TV, but again, I came from a super entrepreneurial family. So in order to figure it out, I did 1 year on the BXRL. I don't know if you remember that old
Norm
and Derek Isaac. And so I went down, I did one season of that, and I was like, okay. And I met this guy on the flight home from one of the last events, this guy named Rich Christensen, this lovely human being. And he was shooting. And I said, man, this is interesting. This is cool, but I think I'd like to do something on our own, because I feel like what we do on the water and our lifestyle on the water can relate a lot more to like families and regular people, because we like to go out and we fish and we free dive and we eat food and we visit the place and like experience all the ocean. It's not just about catching the big one. You know what I mean? Like, come on.
100%.
And so we started Offshore Adventures, and Rich said, I'll shoot it. And we started a little business together, and it started from there. And that became Offshore Adventures, which was really just a representation of the life we were starting to live down there in that region with Captain Brett McBride and this chef named David Traylor, most gifted chef I've ever, just unbelievable gifted chef. If you ever get a chance to eat a meal from David Traylor, fly to eat it. And Brett also with this incredible gift as a waterman, as a free diver, as an explorer, having worked all up and down Baja and the Sea of Cortez. So when we went fishing, we went for 2 weeks. We didn't come back. It was kind of that California yacht Fischer style, family style, or you go to Catalina for the weekend and fish and kind of dive and live the life. And so Offshore Adventures was really just, I think, what Brett McBride and David Traylor introduced me to at the time. And I fell passionately in love with freediving and with that whole kind of exploration and kind of being out there versus coming in and out every day. And that's really what Offshore Adventures was. And I was inspired a little bit too, because I got to be honest with you, the whole catch and release, we go in these waves of things, and people were pushing catch and release so hard at the time. And this would have been like the late 90s, because they were trying to get people motivated, but it had gone a bit too far, where it almost seemed like it's perfectly fine to go out and catch a couple fish for your family and then let the rest go. But if we're going to take a fish, let's honor the beast. Yeah. Let's try to eat it in the most perfect way it can be consumed. And that's why I think a lot of people fell in love with the show, because we'd be like, okay, if you catch this type of fish, but first gill and gut it, pack it on ice until tomorrow. Right. And then the next day you bring it out and you're like, look at how this cuts. Here's how you cut it. It cuts so much cleaner. Look at the texture. It's all relaxed on the bone. And then you eat it, and it eats way better. And people really got in at the time. I mean, we were really, I know it wasn't really our thing, but we were kind of the first catch and cook.
Well, and that whole Food Network momentum and all that stuff.
Yeah. And then we had cooked. So this is back in the late 90s though, right? Then it began. And then my ex-wife, Melissa, I got to give her credit. She was really one of the first women in the outdoor space. And so she's out there fishing and freediving, and then it kind of became all the rave after that. It became, which is great, and various other sports, hunting and everything else. So it was really, evolved. It was our life, and it was a new way to show the ocean, and it was about where it takes you and the people you see, and its bounty, and ultimately having the utmost respect to try to enjoy it in a way that ensures it's robust for our children, because I got a lot into my own personal relationship with the ocean. Like, am I a taker? Am I a giver, or is my relationship in balance with the ocean? I don't think people pause enough and really think about and reflect on their own personal relationship with the body of water they hang out on. Are you just a taker? Are you like out there every time just partying, having fun, fishing, doing whatever? Or do you have a nice balanced relationship with that body of water, and you do that a lot, but you also take some time out to improve it, to love up on it? And so you have balance. That's the only relationships that succeed. So I began to really reflect on that a lot when I started to have kids, and that's impacted our journey. But yeah, Offshore Adventures was, look, man, pivoting to jump on a ship and go catch white sharks is not like really like a step up when you're cruising around the Pacific coast between Alaska and Panama on a yacht fisher with a gourmet chef, and
right.
freediving and fish. But it had to be done, and that's another story.
Yeah, well, correct me if I'm wrong. So did you buy the crabber? So you guys run this big 126-foot converted crabbing boat. Because I feel
that
like
was after, during Offshore Adventures, it was at 72 Elliott, the yacht fisher called the Go Fish.
Right. But then you had the Cabo, right?
In October of 97, right before the stock market crashed, this almost crushed me. I bought the ship.
Okay.
And then I had the ship, and I was trying to unload the other boat, but then everything crashed, and like a month after I bought the ship, and I had to leverage and endure everything I could to just make it through. Right. But like everybody else, So, so then I tried. What really happened with Offshore Adventures was I bought the ship because we wanted to go, my dream was to complete Zane Grey's, the voyages he did not complete.
Oh God, that would
go fish the last virgin seas and really document that
operation.
Yeah, with the mothership, anywhere, anytime, right? Massive, support. You can go anywhere, And so I couldn't sell it. I was basically paying for the boat by making Offshore Adventures and living the life, and kind of like so many people in the space do. And the ship was far more expensive to run. And so while we were still doing Offshore Adventures the last couple of years, we did it on the ship. So you're right, we pivoted over, and it was called the Ocean.
Okay.
And then the 45 Cabo Express was the Go Fish.
Go Fish. FISCH. Which
right. like the other boat, right?
Yeah.
And so we were talking about the science of fishing and things like this, and I couldn't really sell it. And in the meantime, around 2007, well, still while we're making offshore adventures, a scientist came to me and because while we were making offshore adventures, what I quickly learned out, I joined the board of the Billfish Foundation in the early 2000s, and then was going to these meetings where the scientists would tell us what they were learning from their billfish tagging programs. And, we were spending a lot of time on the water. I mean, offshore adventures was like 12 10-day trips a year, or 10-day trips a year, or 14-day trips a year. And what I was hearing wasn't really syncing up. And I learned quickly from the scientists, they're tasked with this impossible chore, right? They have to write these peer-reviewed papers so that we can leverage them for management, but they have no boats, no money, and don't know how to catch what they study. And they're kind of sent out there on their own with like an intern and like a 18-foot or 20-foot whaler.
Yeah.
And we're talking about the future abundance of our planet.
Yeah, that's
and so I started to see they were stuck. They're all stuck as the data deficit. They don't have enough data to manage, right? So what I started doing then when I was making offshore adventures is I would throw a scientist into a bunk, and then we would take them out. We would do our show. Then they would come out and do their science and let it go.
Yeah.
And I started to enjoy the do-good part of it more than the fishing part of it, like helping all these scientists. And so while we were helping these scientists who studied black marlin or sailfish or whatever, they came to me and started talking to me about this shark problem we're having. It was around 2006. And they said, man, we're down to 9% of our large sharks. And if we don't fix the large shark thing, none of these billfish are going to be here. Our work won't matter. Because the system just implodes without a healthy level of sharks. They're the system managers, right? They're the balance keeper, the apex predator. They are the wolf, the lion, and it's not so much how much they eat. It's just that their mere presence cruising around the ocean changes the behavior of everything, and it falls in line so things don't overexploit one level or another of the food web. Mm. And I was like, well, who's helping the shark people? So surely somebody's doing for them like what I'm doing for you here on the Hannibal Bank, or whatever. They're like, man, they're so big. We've just poking at them. We got all these primitive methods. We don't have the capacity to figure out where they're mating, where they're giving birth, how the nursery expands, what they eat, so on and so forth. And we're down to 9% of them. And if we don't turn it around, the abundance of the ocean is going to plummet. We've already seen it in areas where the sharks are eliminated. There's not even birds. There's no bait. Most people, I think, understand how that works. For example, like on a reef, if there's no sharks, all the little fish that pick at the reef, they pick at it all the time, and then the reef dies. When a shark is there, just the mere presence, it doesn't eat that many of those little reef fish, but they all got to hide half the day. So they can only come out and eat at night. So then the reef doesn't die because it can grow. There's not too much pressure on the reef. Wow. Just the shark's presence changes the behavior of everything. Like envision a lion walking through Africa and everything knows it's there and shapes up, right? And so they literally said and I said, look, I'm a simple guy from Kentucky. I said, did you just say if there's no big sharks, there's no fish sandwiches for my grandkids? He's like, yeah, if we don't figure out the big sharks, there's no fish sandwiches for anybody's grandkid.
Scary.
And I was kind of like, and then I looked around and, we'd gotten good at letting big things go and letting them alive for smart people. We were already helping them. Started to earn a little bit of trust in the academic space because this big disconnect between the practical and the academic, or the fisherman and the scientist, right? We were fishermen. And started to build some trust there across that void. And they came to me and they said, this is a problem. And I said, okay, they said, do you think you can get one of those giant sharks in the lift so that we can use the latest technology and ultrasound and blood to get all the stuff we've never been able to do? And I actually called Brett and I asked him, I'm like, Brett, do you think you can get one of these giant sharks in the lift? And you got to
jump at that.
No, it was the total opposite, man. You got to realize, sure, dude, we were spending our time baiting and switching black marlin on the Hannibal Bank, like trying to catch granders, 800 pound, like to go sit around and like wait for a shark to come by. It was like the ultimate downgrade in like angling. You know what I mean? It's just like, so he was like, oh God, yeah, Chris, I could do that, but I don't want to do that. I'm like, look, man, this guy says fish sandwiches, grandkids, I think we got to try to help them. If not us, if not us, then who? Like, they're not going to get it done. And so we went out there in 2007, and there was no plan. There was no plan. I literally went out and just helped the guy. We got one out. We did it.
Was this the trip to Guadalupe Island?
Yeah, in fall of 2007.
But I think people explain like what entailed that trip, though. I mean, that's not like an easy place to get to or to pull this off. I mean,
First of all, everyone's telling us it's impossible. Some people are pissed because sharks are people too, and we're like, look, we're trying to help all the sharks by touching a few here. The science guys asked for our help, man. We're just trying to help. They got no boats, no money, and they don't know how to catch. We know how to catch. We got a boat. We got a little bit of money. So we, that was a wild trip. I mean, I remember heading out there, and I'm going to get emotional here. I haven't thought about this in depth in a long time.
Well, I respect the hell out of you too.
We didn't know what was going to happen, man.
No, and you bankrolled that thing, and you were just saying there was all that crazy turmoil, and you didn't know if you were going to keep the boat, and you guys just rolled the dice. I mean, it's
and we didn't really, we just took a couple buddies out with cameras. We didn't shoot it. We didn't have any plan on doing anything in the shark space. I was still trying to do the Zane Grey thing. I wanted to do that. That's what was my dream. And so we kept doing that. And then he asked us to come help him again in 2008. And that year, I think we got 6. And the first year we got 1. And then I couldn't sell it. I was going to lose the boat, lose my house, lose everything. And it was kind of like, well, maybe this do good thing on the sharks could be like the path. And, we were having no success, like trying to be the ESPN outdoors TV producer, like talking to National Geographic or the Discovery Channel, because they were filmmakers, and we make outdoor TV, And so I went out and hired one of the executive producers of Blue Planet, and asked her to see if she could put a teaser reel from the simple stuff that we had together. And, the people who wouldn't take my call, her name was Maureen Lemire. And the people would take my call, picked up the phone when Maureen called, and she got a meeting. And I remember we made a reel, and I was down to about 90 days of cash, and I was just going to be wiped out because the ship cost so much just tying up the dock. And I remember sleeping in her basement because I didn't want to pay for a hotel room in DC, and watching that teaser reel and not knowing that if I didn't sell it the next day at National Geographic, like on the spot, or Discovery, we had meetings at both the next day, it was kind of over.
Wow.
And Maureen got us the meetings, and we went in. I met with Clark Bunning at the Discovery Channel and Steve Burns at the National Geographic Channel, 2 just amazing guys. And they both wanted it. And then it was about how fast could we put the deal together so I could get some cash flowing, and how long could I bridge before I was like completely just wiped out. Right. So, and we made it through,
Yeah, no. And it's amazing to me because the boat, having been set up to lift the Cabo up on your deck system there. I mean, it was sort of like happenstance or what have you. It was perfect. And you guys figured out how to do this, which no one has ever done what you guys do to get these giant multi-grander animals.
Oh yeah. And it's not like fishing, like we are used to angling, it's not that type of experience. There's no rush. There's not really excitement. It's first of all, you're trying to catch this thing perfectly every time. So we give up tons of bites, right? Because our gear is heavy, and the way we have it rigged, like we're only going to get them in the corner of the mouth, or we're not going to get them. And we're willing to miss 20 or 30% of our bites for that. Because, you can't just go around the world doing research and end up having problems with white sharks like that. That's not the idea, is to help them out. And so we give up a lot, but when we get them, boom, and then the scientists want them in the cradle with almost no stress. So we're trying to get them quick, like Brett now, he'll catch a 4,000 pound white shark in 40 minutes, 1,000 pound white shark in 8 minutes. And so the thing is about it is we're not really catching them.
No,
we're like quickly training them. It's more
walk them over, right?
It's more like teaching a dog how to heel or breaking a horse a little bit. It's not really like fishing at all. So I would say we really quickly train sharks versus catching sharks. And Brett's been able to work with that. That's the power of bringing like the world-class practical, like a Brett McBride together with a world-class academic team. Because, I remember this meeting happened in 2013. We just caught Lydia after Mary Lee had swam from Cape Cod down to Jacksonville Beach, which blew everyone's mind. And people are like, there's no white sharks in Florida. And I'm like, well, there's one under the pier in Jacksonville. And so we followed her down there, and then we caught Lydia right in front of the Mayport Poles at the St. Johns River, like right there on the beach. And Brett just said, hey, Chris, I want to talk to some of the scientists. And Dr. Chris Dold was there along with a whole group of scientists. He's the #1 chief animal guy at SeaWorld, right? And he's a lovely human. And I said, hey, Chris, can you get a couple of your peoples around and gather up some scientists? Brett, we want to talk to you about some things. And so Brett starts telling this story. He's like, if I see these animals, it's just like when I was trying to catch big black marlin, that can kind of just dig in and you can't get them in. He's like, if I can get in front of them and get them in a lead, they got no brakes, right? So if I can get in front of them and put a lot of pressure on them, it seems like these animals will just give up and go where I can almost walk them around like on a loose leash. And the scientists are like, oh yeah, that's called learned helplessness. All sharks have that condition. If they realize their best course of action is to survive, is to give up, they will give up. And they said, but in order to do that, you kind of have to overwhelm them so they know they can't get away. And their best option is to give up. And so when you put that sort of information in the mind of a guy like Brett McBride, everything changes, right? And so the level of science, I think people don't understand. Every piece of gear he's made by hand. You can't buy it, right? It's specifically made for what he's so old school. He still makes our own lines, and all that sort of stuff. And he teaches all the young guys how to make the lines, right? We don't cut lines. We make lines as long as we need them to be. And that's that kind of old school San Diego tuna long range fleet he grew up on. He was doing that from 8 years old, all summer long in Mexico, right? He's beast from that, that landing down there in San Diego, the big long range tuna fleet. And so I started to see, wow, like it's hugely powerful bringing the practical and the academic together. And how could we expect to create an abundant future for the ocean if the practical and the academic aren't together in every space on the ocean and in fact on land, right? And the problem was the fishermen, the scientists, is this way, and the scientists, the fishermen is that way. And I started getting together, I'd just be like, fish sandwiches. You want your grandkid to eat a fish sandwich? Knock it off. No time.
That's not easy to do though either, boy. I'm sure you had to cut
it took a number of years, but then everybody gets it, man. Like everybody, at least at OCEARCH, what was hugely disruptive in the space is now like the normal way and flourishing, right? But it does, a couple things kind of came out to me, along that journey. Is like, I completely don't understand why the recreational fishing community is not completely leading the way toward global ocean abundance. I think more so than academia. I mean, they're out there every day. They love it the most. They're paying for it through taxes and fees and other things, and they go out and enjoy it, but then they're not involved. And then you got this separate group of academics that never get on the water, but have to write these papers. Yeah. And so like, why aren't our leading companies in the industry, in the recreational fishing space, or anybody who sells anything around the water, like leading where the research is going and who's collecting the data? And like, you think about like our partners, when you think about a Yeti or a Costa, a SeaWorld, these kind of companies, like if a scientist needed to do a bonefish study or any sort of study anywhere, I could call Costa and be like, who's the man on Sanibel? Or I could call Yeti and be like, who's the person in Louisiana? And we could be matching up like world-class anglers with world-class academics to get world-class data sets now. Yeah. And it's all disconnected, right? And so I'm trying to, number one, prove how much more efficient it is by doing stuff that's never been done before, just by bringing the practical and the academic together on a common vision with a selfless disposition. Great grandchildren first. It's no more time for silliness. And I'm hoping as our brand emerges and I continue to, evolve and build out our scale and capacity of OCEARCH, that we're going to be able to have more influence in the global ocean conversation because of the white shark thing, man. We're the world's leader in the white shark space. Like everyone watches. We got billions of impressions a year. It's like the white shark space is crazy. And so anyway, I freestyle with you because I'm so excited to talk to someone from the space where we came from and like the opportunity that space has in creating the abundant future, because they have the component that the scientists are all stuck. They have it. And if we just plug it together, like the rate of learning radically escalates.
Yeah, I think, probably the best researchers in that space love to be on the water, whether they're anglers or sailors or whatever.
Totally.
And the best fishermen learn the environment. They know the tides, they know the water quality, they know all this stuff. And what you're saying makes a lot of sense. And I think it'd be well received. And it seems to be sort of going that way, but it's a slow burn.
I think it is, like I didn't mention Yamaha, our other partner, like they're now working with us more on like their nonprofit than they are with their engines, right? But if you think about what brands can lead us, these are the kind of brands that could rise up, really organize how we're going to approach connecting the world-class practical and academic together to make sure that their businesses exist in 50 or 100 years. Like it's in their own best interest, right? And then all you do in today's world is create content around that. And that is your marketing campaign. Because everyone's a social, a conscious consumer these days. It's all about having the social license to operate. So the do good becomes the branding campaign, which ultimately ends up in more abundance, which then is the company's 50-year plan to have security to exist in a market. So
learning. And I would imagine, you guys have done like 40 something expeditions now, right?
44. Yeah, we start our 45th next month.
And have tagged a buttload of fish, big females, males, and you have the tracking website, which I totally went down a wormhole on this morning. Was looking at all these sharks and all the miles they've gone. And, I live in Florida, so I was checking out all these, 700 pounders that are hanging out around here. And I think through that education and all the stuff you're learning, you're passing it on. But what are some of the highlights you've seen over these expeditions?
I think the real highlight is right now. So there's 9 great white shark populations around the world. And all of these populations are somewhat separated. There's not a lot of crossover, right? And so we know that if you can solve the life history puzzle of these nine populations and you can manage your white sharks to abundance, you're moving the region to abundance. So, because they are the balance keeper, right? The system manager. It has never been done where the life history has been fully described. So we are fully describing the life history of the white shark off the east coast of the United States. This next expedition is to nail down the mating site. It's the last piece of the puzzle. And so, check 1 out of 9 done. If we can move around the world and solve the other 8, those regions will have the data set to move their systems toward abundance. So when you look at the highlights and you step back over the years, I'll never forget the first ones at Guadalupe, like the very first one, because everyone said it was impossible. We were literally going 300 miles off the beach into an ocean that can be nasty on the way to try to catch giant things and we didn't know what was going to happen. So, that lessons from the dinner table, Chris, nothing's impossible. Just keep inching forward. An inch is a cinch, a yard is hard. Just keep inching forward. And, anything's possible if you don't care who gets the credit. And I remember the boat ride out, and I don't remember many boat rides because there's been a lot of them. And then we got one, and we proved it was possible. And then there was room to, improve from there. So I'll never forget that. And then, we've had so many amazing trips in so many different special places, seeing and working on Ningaloo Reef in Northwest Australia, the most pristine body of water I've ever been on by far. I think it's like what the Great Barrier Reef must have been like 50 or 80 years ago. But when you come back into the shark space, the real thing I think is like the tagging of Mary Lee, which happened in the fall of 2012. We had just come from Africa. We tagged 40 white sharks down in South Africa. The show had been canceled, because we did 30 hours on National Geographic after Offshore Adventures. We did Sharkmen, and then we did 10 hours on the History Channel. And I was selling the TV to fund the ship, and then I give the ship to the scientists. because ship costs a couple $1 million a year, the whole operation. And so I was making TV to pay for the ship to give it away. And I lost my funding source, my cash flow. And so I had about $500,000 left from making the show. And I remember thinking to myself, like, well, if I can't get some cash flow going here in 90 or 120 days or so, it's like crash and burn, house, everything, but whatever. And when you think you're going to lose all your shit, the first time is really scary, but then after that, it's not at all. And then you always figure something out. Everybody does. And I said, well, this guy named Greg Scommel had said, hey, man, we're starting to see white sharks pop up in the Cape.
Okay, he's from Massachusetts.
Yeah, and he's like, it would be unbelievable if you could help us get some, because they were running around. Most of these guys are running around poking, it's a very like primitive method, poking things in sharks. You just really can't get the data sets you need to really, there's not much leverageable data for management. It doesn't tell you what they're doing. It tells you where they are, but you got to understand what they're doing, where they are, if you really want to help them out. And so I said, okay, we'll come. So we went up there and I didn't have a gig anymore. So I remember I had just started the Global Shark Tracker, which freaked people out, showing people where the sharks went. And it wasn't that people saw where the sharks went. It was the science community was pissed at me for open sourcing the data.
Yeah, I don't get that, but whatever.
So anyway, that's another conversation. So we had to disrupt the concept of the ownership of data. It's the first time I've ever had to fight to own anything so I could give it away. Anyway, we worked it out, and I've got the Global Shark Tracker up. So now people are tracking them in real time. And we rolled up there and we caught this first shark named Jeannie, and named her after Jeannie Clark, one of the founders there at Moat Marine Laboratories out of Sarasota, legend. And then we named the second one, and it was near the end of the trip. And I named it Mary Lee because I thought it was the last white shark we would ever touch. I was literally like making plans with my dad on how I was going to unwind everything and trying to hold it together and still do something great. And I was still had some pitches out there. I was trying to get people, sell some corporate sponsorships and so forth. And we got Mary Lee, and I named Mary Lee after my mom. The last shark I ever thought I would work up. And then when we parked the ship there in New Bedford, I took a picture of the ship. The only time I've ever done that. I thought when I drove away, I didn't think I'd ever see it again. And Mary Lee proceeded to swim down the east coast of the United States and like light it up, man. I mean, she was 4,000-pound female, and she loved the beach, and she loved rivers, and she loved inlets, and she loved bays, and she was poking her nose in everywhere. And I remember on that trip, when we were doing the show, they wouldn't let us share what was going on in real time because they wanted people to have to watch it on the network later. Okay. So we weren't able to engage with the community. People were like, what's going on that boat out there on my sharks? And we couldn't really even engage so I remember when we went to Cape Cod, I was like, look, man, if we want to hold on to it, we got to give it away. We got to give away everything. We're going to give away the data. We're going to give away the content. It's going to take us all in the end anyway, and so we did that, and everyone came. And like the news networks came. We were never allowed to have the news out when you're making a TV show to include the people in real time, like what's going on. And we got Mary Lee, and they covered it. And then everywhere she went, every outlet wanted to cover the 4,000-pound white shark named Mary Lee off their coast. And she kind of went viral, ended up with like 160,000 Twitter followers, and was driving like $180 million worth of earned media a year.
That's wild.
And so we started to see, another path, because we were the only people with the content. And when the earned media wanted a piece of content, we would give it to them, but we could just give them brand integrated content.
Yeah, but now
we could leverage the press as our content distributor and integrate our sponsors because we had the content, and our work and the sharks were newsmakers.
Yeah. And so let's talk a second about the tags you guys use, just so the listeners understand, because like you're talking with billfish, a lot of tags are just spaghetti tags, which you get like a 1% return rate on those. And then there's satellite tags, which we put on billfish, but you guys are putting some like computers on these things.
Yeah, and we'll use that one satellite tag for the purpose of understanding we'd use the same thing as you see on the billfish, but we just use it for their up and down because it's not very good for where they go.
And when they come out of the surface, when they're dorsal,
that's a different tag, right? That's the spot tag that you mount on their fin.
Okay.
Right. The spot tag is the one everyone follows on the tracker. 4 different types of tags. The spot tag is what everyone engages with and what they follow and what they see on the tracker and in the news and so forth. Every time the shark puts its fin out of the water for about 5 years, if it's up for long enough, we'll get a location and that pings right through the satellite into the global shark tracker, the OCEARCH app, or at OCEARCH.org, where people can follow them all in real time. And then we use the same type of tag, the pop-off satellite tag you're talking about, because this gives you either up and down momentum, up and down movements, and then you can lay that on where they are, and then they're going up and down. Oh, what are they doing while they go up and down? And then the third one is an internal acoustic tag. We make an incision and we insert it, and then it's got a 10-year battery. So that then has to swim by a receiver somewhere within a few hundred yards of a receiver, and it'll just pick up the presence of that shark. Most of that is just logged and they get it later, but they do have some real-time acoustic stuff now. And then the fourth one is this biologgers. These are the computers that we're putting on the animals. We do this with Dr. Nigel Hussey and his team out of the University of Windsor. These things will have accelerometers in her, so you're getting tail beats and attitude and all that sort of stuff. They'll have a sonar in it where they're sonaring to see what the shark is seeing, so they can pick up different species of fish and identify them through their sonar. And then occasionally they'll swap out the sonar for a camera. But most of the time it's sonar. So these are like computers, like you said. This is more the other tags. You put them together and you got $6,000 or $7,000 worth of tags on the animal. You throw this thing on top, it jumps up to like 20, right? So you're sending these animals out with like $20,000 worth of tags on them. The biologgers, the big expensive one, can only stay on for a day or two because it collects so much data, it runs out of memory, right? So then you got to pop off and you got to go collect it. So you got to be real careful where you are and when you put it out on an animal that can swim 100 to 150 miles a day, because 2 days from now can be far, far away. So yeah, the suite of, it's all the most modern, latest stuff, gathering the maximum amount of data in the least amount of time, right? That's the idea. The idea is, okay, this is a fundamental puzzle to solve for ocean abundance. How do we collect all the data we need to collect, touching the fewest amount of animals, and collect the data and publish? And so that's why now we have 49 scientists doing 25 research projects on every animal we touch from 25 different research institutions.
How does
the
that
tracking
number,
is just one of them.
How does that number differ from when you got started? The number of research.
First trip we went out, there was one.
Yeah, that's amazing. And
then we said, hey, we need more. And he's like, no, we're not going to collaborate. Then I got in touch with a guy named Pete Klimley, another science legend out of Cal Davis. And he built a nice team with Mauricio Hoyos, who's a great guy and a great scientist down there, was at Guadalupe and the Revillagigedos, and Alex Hearns and a couple guys. And then we assembled like a little 5-person team, mostly led by UC Davis. And that was cool. It worked, right? And that was at the Revillagigedos. This is a great story. You know, the Revillagigedos Park there, the islands just south of Cabo, about 200 miles. They turned it into a marine park, and we spent a lot of offshore adventures there. And we went there and did a research project on big tigers back around 2010 or 11. And when they went to make it a park, which was about 7 or 8 years later, they were going to make the boundaries of the park 3 miles around this archipelago. But then they went with them with our data on the tiger sharks, the apex predator, the balance keeper of the park. They went on a 27-mile foraging run every night offshore. So they expanded the park out to 30 miles. So this is how our data gets used all the time like that, all over for this corridor that they're talking about putting together between Cocos Island and the Galapagos Island. A lot of that data is from our animals down there because we have the most accurate modern technology tracking these animals for the first time ever. And now more and more people are trying to leverage them, particularly on smaller sharks they can handle, So I forgot what we were talking about, man, but that's how the data works, the tags, right? But the really cool stuff is also the stuff, the tags just tell you where they are. All the other projects, a suite of about 20 other projects, they tell you what they're doing where they are, what they're eating where they are, what their toxicological makeup is, because these are the indicators of our ocean health, right? White sharks are bioaccumulators. So that means they're at the top of the food chain. So a little fish eats a piece of plastic or eats something small, a little critter, and then it gets eaten by a bigger one, and it goes into the next animal and into the next animal. And by the time you get to the white shark, it is accumulating all the toxins and all the bad stuff from the region it lives in, because it is the apex predator. So you can catch a white shark and understand its toxicological profile and understand the basic health of the ocean from Newfoundland to the Gulf of Mexico.
Wow. With just some blood samples and tissue
samples? Blood samples and tissue samples, right? So we have all of that toxicological work going. We have a human health program where we're taking bacteria off these animals and developing new antibiotics for humans, because it's a novel source, right? You think of a species that's been evolving for 400 million years. It's had a chance to evolve way further than we have. Like, it's super efficient. There's almost no parts they don't use. We still have parts we don't use, right? And the bacterial colony on them has had the same opportunity, right? So this is a novel source of bacteria for new antibiotics to help us in an era where we need novel sources. Wow. And then there's a whole reproductive thing going on where we're looking at the sperm of the males in the microscope. We're getting their blood and getting the testosterone of the male, the estrogen of the female, to zero in on where they're mating, and then the ultrasounds of their ovaries and all this other stuff that tells you what they're doing where they are. So that, like, you're right here. Yeah. Oh, well, they're mating right there, right? This is primary foraging, and they're eating seals and they're eating cod or whatever. And down in the south, they're eating crabs and they're eating menhaden and they're eating the odd dead whale. So it's all the other stuff that, when you weave it together with the tracking, kind of for the first time gives you a picture of what their life is like.
That's so cool. And that's sort of the most important information, right? Is to protect those spawning areas, nursing grounds, and all that.
It's all about the birthing site and the nursery and how the nursery expands, right? These animals are born 4.5 feet, 45 pounds. The first year of their life, all these sharks off the East Coast in the Western North Atlantic, they're born in the New York, New Jersey Bight in the late spring and early summer. They live there under all that menhaden and mackerel and squid, like the perfect place for an apex predator to drop off its pup, right? And they live there until the early winter when the water cools down. The first year of their life, they cruise as far south as South Carolina. Then when it gets hot again the following spring, they'll move north, but they'll stretch a little further north into Rhode Island. And then when it cools off, they'll push a little further south. By the time they're 4 years old, they're ranging all the way from Newfoundland to the central Gulf of Mexico. Forage in 4 years. Now, this 4.5 footer now is probably 7 foot or something like that. These animals then have to do that, and they're not sexually mature till they're 20 years old. So they got to live 20 years just to replace themselves. And then the females only give birth every other year because their gestation period is about a year, a little more. So they can only mate every other year. And when they give an average litter size of about 8 pups, right? So there is no skyrocketing in numbers. It's kind of like a long, slow build because they got to live so long to replace themselves. But it completely allows you to understand how in the 70s and 80s we decimated them to nothing. Because they can't live 20 years, to replace themselves, right? And so then when they're about 20, the males will keep moving up and down the coast. They're very coastal. Some are a little offshore, but these animals are kind of coastal and pelagic, but they spend a lot of time on, but they go wherever they want. And then when the females are 20, we believe that those females are making this routine, summer and fall up foraging in the north on the seals. Now, when they're bigger, once they're over about 10 foot long, and then they slide down to the south and they're overwintering primarily between Cape Hatteras and Cape Canaveral. When you look at the Gulf Stream and it comes up at Florida, it kicks off Canaveral and it kicks out to the northeast and then wraps around into Hatteras. And that Gulf Stream pins a cold body of water against the southeastern United States. That cold body of water is their primary winter habitat. And then about 50% of them will trickle south of Canaveral and wander into the Gulf of Mexico for 2 or 3 months and then come back. And we believe we believe that they're kind of coming together, and the peak of mating should be between now and May in the lower Outer Banks area. But anywhere really between northeastern Florida and there, if they come across another shark on a reef or whatever, it just seems like they start to move north. And, Cape Hatteras is a faunal break, where a lot of animals only live above it and a lot of fish only live below it. Very few cross the faunal break, right? And so they get pushed up against Hatteras because it's so cold just to the north in Virginia that they're pushing up there trying to go around the corner to make their way back north. But it's, they go around the corner and the temperature drops 15 degrees and then they kind of pile up there waiting for it to warm up. And it seems like if you look at the tracker now and you look in that North Carolina, South Carolina area, you'll see, there's sharks. Yeah, they're sprinkled around Florida and up into the Gulf, but there's a pile of them right there, and they're kind of having to make that way to get ready to go north when it's time, and maybe mating just prior to that. That's what we think. And that's why our next expedition is out of Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina, and Morehead City and Ocracoke in that region there.
That's crazy. And do you find the big ones travel sort of alone, right? Or in small grouping?
Yeah, they move alone, but it's like similar timing. So these animals, what's completely mind blowing about these animals when we started, and you ask about things, and I take it for granted now, these animals know exactly where they are. They know exactly where they're going, and they know what the date is. So their lives are incredibly synced up with the moon. Like we'll see these animals off the same beach at the same moon phase year over year on a black drum run. They're always on an event, which a lot of times, are synced up with the moon. The fall and the spring equinox, I think, are huge triggers for these animals. I believe the spring equinox is what triggers like, the days are getting longer. Maybe it's time to mate. Maybe it's time to think about heading north. Right? When the fall equinox is the same, it's time to start thinking about heading south. So these animals on the same moon phase year over year at the same spots, they're going from the same location in Cape Breton to right past the same island in the Bahamas and up the coast to the same beach in North Carolina year after year after year. So their capacity to navigate and their calendar and sense of timing is, I think, really been probably the most kind of outrageous observation that you would never have. There's no wandering around.
No, they're on a program.
They know where they're going and they know what they're doing and they know why. That's been pretty stunning.
And you guys have obviously caught a lot of other species of sharks. And, one thing we're seeing here in Florida, and I'm sure a lot of people say this to you in your travels and stuff, it's like, we've seen a boom in a lot of shark populations down here inshore, especially on wrecks and reefs, and you're fishing. And as soon as you lose one fish to a shark, you're like, you have to move. There's just a lot of sharks. What is your answer to guys who, are like, there's too many sharks in the water?
Well, that's just what it's like in the Galapagos Islands or at Cocos Island or at Ningaloo Reef. That's what it's like when you're in a great wild virgin ocean. And what I think people sometimes don't understand, back in the 70s and 80s, you couldn't catch redfish. You couldn't catch a snook. There was no stripers off of Montauk. There was no white marlin. There was no sailfish in your kayak off Miami. There was no fish, man. I grew up fishing there, full speed, Marco Island through the 70s and the 80s. And when the state of Florida introduced the gillnet ban, and then when it trickled up and down the East Coast in the late 80s, early 90s, NOAA and a lot of the state managers, they wanted to bring back the recreational fishing economy because nobody was buying boats, man. Nobody was going fishing. They didn't need a truck because you couldn't catch. And that was the whole East Coast all the way down into Florida. And so in an effort to bring back that recreational fishing economy, they got most all the gillnets out of the inshore waters across the eastern seaboard down into Florida. There's still some gillnet fisheries in a few places, but I think it's as reasonably well managed as you can do with a gillnet. This is a funny story because it relates back to the white shark. When they removed the gillnets off of Long Island in Jersey to bring back the striped bass, unbeknownst to ourselves, they removed the gillnets from the white shark birthing site. And that's why 20 years later, we started to see white sharks at Cape Cod.
Huh? No one even knew, or did
they were all getting whacked in the gill nets like right when they were born. Their whole first 4 months of their lives, it was like heavy gill netting, and no one knew. I mean, I'm sure some people knew, but no one talked about it. And that's how it's been, and that's okay. They probably didn't even know. When you see these little baby white sharks, they look like whatever, a little baby mako or whatever. And so then that was in the late 80s, early 90s. And then, the slot limit comes into play with the redfish, right? And then it trickles across into the snook. And now you have the power of time. And 30 years later, then around 1990, our shark populations were decimated because they have to live so long to replace themselves. And so they started protecting and managing back sharks. And so what you have now that's occurring is you're basically in the middle of the rewilding of Florida and the entire Atlantic seaboard. There are more fish there now than there's been since the 40s and the 50s. People are seeing things now that we haven't seen from the 40s and 50s. And so a couple things developed during that period of time. So in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, we got this highly compromised ocean system. There was like no apex predators. We're losing our reefs, where all sorts of trickle down is happening we don't even understand because of it. And so at the time, suddenly it becomes fashionable to try to see who can catch a fish on the lightest line possible as a measurement of skill. And the whole kind of evolution of light tackle angling kind of begins to unfold in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. And it was about, who can catch the fish on the lightest piece of tackle. That was a way to interpret a level of skill or to keep record line classes and things. Well, I think what people didn't understand at the time, and it was their normal because it was what they were doing every day, light tackle fishing and that sort of activity is really only successful in highly compromised systems. Light tackle, let me say that again. Light tackle fishing is really only highly successful in highly compromised systems because there's no predators. So you can play fish for 30 or 40 minutes and you can not put any drag on them, catch them on 2 pound or 4 pound or 6 pound. It takes a long time. You end up killing the fish, but you can do it, right? But in a healthy ocean system, like the Galapagos or the Cocos, or pick a place, I'll be happy to chat with you. I've had a fair good run at a few cool spots. If you're not catching the fish on extremely heavy tackle very fast, you're sharked. Because the ocean is wild and balanced. It is sharky. A virgin ocean is the sharkiest thing you've ever seen in your life. There is no waste. There is no waste. And because those sharks are there, everything behaves, right? So you end up with more fish at every level because one level is not putting too much pressure on another level, and everything, the presence of those animals creates a balanced system. So for example, the white sharks, when they're up in the Northeast, we got our marine mammals coming back, right? From 50 years ago, the marine mammal seals just moving down the coast, right? Reestablishing their historic range, which I believe could go as far south as the Carolinas. Right now, they're just kind of passing through Jersey. But wasn't that long ago, they were only in the Cape, and then they show up at Montauk and there's one or two, and now they're at Montauk like there, and now they're just one or two moving. They keep pushing as they grow. We know that when white sharks are present, just one white shark swimming up and down a beach full of seals, those seals eat 1/4 as much per day just because of the presence of the white shark. It's like the lion walking out in the plain. The deer are not going to come out and over forage the plain if the lion is walking around. So they're forced to only eat at night, which allows the plain to grow and not get wiped out, right? So the white shark's moving up and down the beach. The seals are waiting until they're almost starving. They go eat a little bit. They get back out. One white shark's keeping thousands of seals. If that white shark's not there, we know that every one of those seals eats 4 times more per day.
Which is killing all the bait and everything.
But then they go and they wipe out the cod. They wipe out the stripers. They wipe out the menhaden. They wipe out the lobsters. There's no fish.
So you need that policeman kind of.
They are the wildest thing about this situation when it comes to the anglers, because of the lack of the understanding, is that the very thing they're complaining about is actually the guardian of their fish stock. All of those sharks, like when you're down there in places like Florida that are moving around every night when the squid try to migrate up and come in, those sharks keep the squid down. If those sharks aren't there, those squid come in and they eat all the fry. They eat all the baby tarpon, all the baby bonefish, all the baby everything. And then there is none to grow up for us to either play with or to catch and consume. So so they're getting sharked, right? And they've grown up in this compromised system where they could fish with light tackle and they could fish wherever they wanted. And that really is only possible in a compromised system. So as we rewild the system, and we're getting the system as wild again, like, they're not complaining about having to run far to get a bite. They're not complaining about the number of bites they get.
It's the sharks.
They're getting sharked, right? So they're getting more bites closer to home because the aggregate abundance of the system is skyrocketed. But now the challenge as an angler is you have to adapt. You have to adapt. I mean, you have to go to heavier gear. You got to learn when the fish are on that wreck. Maybe it's synced up with the moon and when they're not. So you know which few days of the month you can go strike there and where you have to go another time. You have to be a fisherman. The idea, and I'm not going to riff on this too much, but the idea that an angling community would request that we compromise the system to accommodate their method of fishing, I think is something they haven't thought through.
Yeah, well, I'm curious what the response from these salty dudes is that are complaining about losing red snapper or something when you.
I think most of them get it when you do that. I mean, look, they love the ocean too. It's just inconvenient, and we see it a lot. This is just how it is. This is no judgment around this. When you have people who fish out of the same spot every year, all year, they go to the same spots, they do the same thing. And then when that gets disrupted by the rewilding of the ocean, there's a problem. Yeah. No, there's no problem. The problem is you can't go to the same spot and do the same thing anymore. You have to adapt. You have to be a fisherman. So if you're a fisherman who fishes all over the world all the time and you have to figure out every system when you come into it on your own, that's just like your normal operating mode. Oh, we can't fish here. It's too sharky. We're bouncing over here. I mean, that's just normal, but if you've been conditioned or trained to be able to go to the same spot and do the same thing and be successful, and then the ocean begins to rebound and it's no longer a highly compromised system, you're going to bump into a whole lot of things that you haven't bumped into before. And you have two choices. You can either adapt and overcome, or you can complain.
Yeah. Wow.
But the ideas of requesting that we compromise the system to accommodate an angling method or technique, I think if anyone thinks that through and they truly want to ask that question, it's not going to work out for them in the end.
Well said. I think you cleared that up very well. So this next trip, when do you guys take off on that? You must be getting ready to go.
April 17 to May 4th.
Oh, that's
so it's just about a few weeks away, a couple weeks away. Really hard now on Brett. When we started the project on the East Coast, the scientists said they wanted 100 sharks. Never been like that. There'd never been one, right? So everyone thought that was impossible. So we're on 88 right now.
Wow.
And so, but the problem is the last 12, at first they would be any white shark he caught. They were super stoked, right? Any data, because it's all new. But now they're like, we would like a mature male and a mature female from this particular area of the world during this particular month, so that we can fill in this data gap. So these last 12 are super important and really hard. Like we might have to catch 30 to get the right 12, so it's been really challenging to not only, it used to be hard just to try to find white sharks. Now we're trying to find mature males and mature females amongst white sharks. And that is getting, that's a proper test.
Wow. Well, if there's anybody that can do it, it's you guys. So
yeah, Brett's time. What you really need there is weather. It's hard to get a bunch of good weather to really build on. You get a day or two and you get blown off and so forth. So if we get some good weather, that seems to be the difference. And if he has time on the water, we'll end up on the fish in the right spot.
That's great. Well, Chris, it was so fun to talk to you. Thank you for being so generous with your time. I know you're a busy guy. And
hey, much love to all my angling brothers out there. I hope everyone can appreciate just straight talk.
Look, I think we can.
And look, it's really like we should be the people driving this effort forward. We love it the most.
100%.
And if we can get ourselves into a common vision with a reasonably selfless disposition and prioritize the path that we need to move things toward abundance for both recreational, commercial, and, aggregate abundance with the players and the corporations in the space and the professionals making a living in the space, turning people onto the ocean, taking them out, along with those people who want to come and be on the water and embrace it and what their children do. We should be the community that is driving the ocean toward abundance, not the academic community, not the government. I mean, I think if you think about that for a second, you'll be like, oh, that makes sense. Like, you know, if we want to, and we have a vested interest in it, not only personally for what we love and for what our families, but many of the companies, it's their future market.
Yeah, you're not, like you said earlier, you're not going to sell boats, you're not going to sell tackle and all that stuff if the fishery goes
right. So if we have the right leadership that can rise up in the space, you know, kind of the Glenn Hughes of the world, the Yamahas, you know, the Martin you know, Peters. The Martin Peters, there is a real opportunity to pull these brands together with the angling expertise and the equipment and the passion of the people to take the science in the ocean space so far beyond where it's gone so much faster. It's like a layup. It's just a matter of trying to get people on a common vision with a selfless disposition. So we just prioritize what everyone needs, see what the most urgent thing is, attack that. That means you might have to play second fiddle, but it will get done. It just might be a few years versus you battling on your own, and it'll never get done because everyone's battling on their own and they have no scale and they got no strategy. And that's why we're getting smoked by the commercial lobby, you know? And so anyways, I hope I can inspire fishermen to like take ownership, balance your relationship with the water. Give her what she gives you.
That's a great message.
And if that happens, we will be proud of what we leave behind.
I'm with you. And we try to do that in the Angler's Journal too. I mean, it's why we write about fly fishing and offshore trolling and everything in between, because we have that shared passion.
Well, and you got a legendary brand, man. Pedigree.
Working on it. I would love to do more with you guys. It's been so fun talking to you, and I really believe in the work you're doing. And truth be known, I've had a bit of a man crush on Brett since I met him in the Brett Hall show years ago. That guy's a stud. And you know,
you should come on out on the ship.
Oh, that would be cool.
Yeah, that's easy. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, all the
best.
Good
luck on the next trip. Take care.
Everybody out there, enjoy your time on the water. Take your kids.